Trading Weekly. Once again, we are in the 12th of April. It is spring, Kaye. How are you feeling?
It's cold here in New Jersey, but it's going to get super warm next week. So we are looking forward to transitioning from winter to finally good weather.
It's been nice and warm here, really, in the last couple of weeks. So it's been a breath of fresh air for sure. As I mentioned, obviously, spring's around the corner. So, yeah, it's feeling good. There's definitely hope on the horizon. Things are going to get warmer. And, yeah, people are going to be happier, I think, is generally the consensus of how
I
that works.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think people are very happy when it moves from winter to summer and the spring and summer, and then people are very happy towards the holiday season when it starts to kick in, right? And in
Yeah.
between, everything is very miserable throughout the.
It's just that January to March period where everyone's just a little bit sad, and that's okay. We can look for the sadness into the happiness. Of course, we're just a couple of guys on the internet just looking at charts, giving our perspectives on the markets, and we love to do it. So it's not financial advice. So anything that you see during this live stream cannot be construed as advice, of course. Make sure you put your stock requests in the comments down below. We've had a few already come in, which is nice to see. And obviously, massive thank you to Wolf as well for actually the platform. We literally couldn't do without you. So yeah, how was your trading in the last couple of weeks? So we were off last week, weren't we? So
We were off, but I was still trading, and I'm sticking with very few tickers. One of the tickers that we're going to talk about is Meta today. I'm sticking with AMD. So being very selective in trading rather than expanding further and trying new tickers. Definitely not doing that. Sticking very basics. Go back to the basics. Whenever the market is very uncertain, you always go back to the basics. That's what I'm doing right now.
yeah, I think in this tumultuous, which seems to be a word I'm using quite a lot at the moment, this kind of uncertain time, obviously, the things going on with the Strait of Hormuz and all the geopolitical tension just in general, it's interesting to kind of maybe just take a step back and concentrate on your big players within the portfolio, which I'm sure we'll talk to a little bit later on. But let's go ahead and jump into the slideshow for today. We've got some new graphics. We've gone green. It's not for hope, it's just for a little bit of a change up. You know how I do. Every 6 months or so, I'll change the colours. So, yes, of course, we've got the week commencing April 13th, obviously tomorrow. The general kind of layout of the live stream, of course, market overview, fear and greed index, earnings preview, SPY weekly chart, yearly performance, and our picks of the week. I've gone for RIVN, and Kaye once again has gone for Meta. So looking forward to diving into that. And of course, at the end, there was talks. There's potential, positive talks, and we can see that reflected in the charts here. We have just had news, I think, today where Trump's come out and said he's shutting the Strait of Hormuz. So it'll be interesting to see how the futures open tonight. But nevertheless, we'll talk to the slide in front of us. So we've got some big numbers. We've got Nvidia and Google, Meta, all around that kind of 9 to 10% level. Amazon flying up at 15% this week. We've got lots of kind of semiconductor names doing quite well. We've got obviously Broadcom, Micron, and AMD kind of in the bottom left corner there. You could probably include Intel as well, all up really handsomely. So if you're in that, that is fantastic. So yeah, not much else really to mention. Maybe Tesla's down 4%. Is that something to be alarming about?
That's I mean
Not the biggest fan, are you, at the
they had
moment,
weak
so.
numbers, right? I mean they still had weak numbers from the last what I saw. But yeah, it was basically all about the semiconductors last week, and
Yeah.
then the Meta was above 11%. So yeah, pretty
So
solid week.
semiconductors holding up the market for sure, aren't they?
Now, if you kind of realize before we jump on, if you realize like if you see a 9-10% increment or 22% increment for multi-billion-dollar market caps. So, when it goes down, it can come back up this fast as well. Like AMD was in particularly because I was trading AMD. AMD was almost like, in a pretty bad state. It was just going on the downhill trend, and then suddenly the trend changed altogether.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens, isn't it? You can get that on the smaller time frames as well. That's why obviously we take advantages as day traders. Obviously, you're not so much a day trader, but you dabble in it every now and then. Move on to the next slide then, which is the fear and greed index. We're up to 38 now. 1 week ago we were 23. I think the week before that, when we were last on,
Was the extreme
definitely
fear.
it was in the teens for sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that. So we bounced up again, kind of alongside the price action, of course, which makes a lot of sense. I still think there's a little bit more pain ahead potentially. Just my thoughts, my loose thoughts. Do you want to speak to the left side of the screen there, Kay?
Yeah, absolutely. So put to call again back up 0.88. Generally in a market which is neutral or greedy, you see the put to call around the zero point 0.6. So that's like a baseline, and these put to call is basically the 5-day average of the S&P 500 put to call. So very broad, very generic, but it kind of gives you a direction. You can't trade based on this, but it gives you a general sense of the market, how folks are feeling. So which means more puts are being opened compared to the calls. So which means more negative sentiment. VIX was actually, when I was updating this deck, when we last week we were not here, but the week that we were here, VIX was 31. It dropped to 19 because of the whole ceasefire news that came out. Now, whatever happens today, you know, Trump posted something today. I don't know. Maybe tonight at early morning he will post something just to lower the temperatures, because what he's gonna do. I think he's gonna test and see how the futures react. If the futures go suddenly, the VIX goes back up to 30s or mid 20s, he might put something out there as a line item just to bring it down so that market does not open bad. But this drama will continue to happen, and that's the part of the volatility that we have to deal with. SPY was up 3%, QQQ 4.4%. Key events, I think, ceasefire, there's nothing we can do about it, like as traders, as retail traders or investors. There's no control over that. But what we can focus on is actually the earnings kickoff. And we'll cover that in the earnings. So the big names are starting to report earnings from this week onwards. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue to go on to the next slide, actually, which is, of course, the earnings slide that we've got. Big names, obviously Netflix, Taiwan Semiconductor, ASML, and obviously the banks as well. So yes, earnings season is already here once again. So another exciting time for traders, that's for sure. Any particular names that you're looking on this?
No, I think you covered ASML, TSMC, Netflix, three big ones. That's all we care about, at least for this week. That will set the stage for so ASML and TSMC is going to set the stage for the semiconductors, and Netflix is going to kind of give us an idea on the general sentiment of consumers, not necessarily the broader sentiment, but just general sentiment on the consumers. Are they like spending or not?
Yeah, there's always quite a good guide to see how the earnings season is going to go when Netflix comes out and does their business. The following week will probably be Tesla, wouldn't it? So the big names start coming out then, won't they?
Yeah, and then you'll of course have the Max 7, Amazon, Apple,
Yeah.
those guys.
Awesome. We'll move on to our first chart of the day. But before we dive into it, of course, we do have a couple of comments here. Snow Crowd Net, no worries, we can get to them. Ni halala. We've got service now as well from Felix. So go ahead and put your requests in the comments down below, whether you're on YouTube or of course on X. We would love to go through them. Always looking for trade opportunities, and also going through our kind of thoughts on the stocks that you want to bring to the table. I'm happy to do so. Let's jump into the SPY weekly chart then. Seems to be kind of a theme that we do the SPY weekly chart now. Just makes it a little bit easier, a bit more, maybe of a broader look. Perhaps maybe one day we'll bring up the daily. But you can see the last couple of weeks there's a really nice bounce. So I've put in a line, typically, of course, from the lows of the kind of last April, which of course with all the tariff news. This year, of course, we've got basically the war news. Obviously, I'll come down from there. So we've got a couple of lows there within the market. And I've just kind of drawn this channel from way back at the beginning of 2022, as you can see on the left side of the screen there, where my cursor is. That's just where the volume picked up. So I thought I'd draw the line from that top all the way across to where we are now. I'm not saying we go back to all-time highs. I think actually we come back down first before that, because we do have a whole bunch of volume here on the right side, as you can see. So I think we touched that, and I think we might struggle to get through that, and then maybe come back down to maybe these lows around 650-ish, 640, and then hopefully then maybe we can make a turn up to the upside. So I think that's beneficial for all of our portfolios, but of course the market has other ideas. On the other side, before I turn it around to UK, if we come back down and we break this potential trend line here, of course there's only 2 contact points, so I completely understand that. But if we do break this down to the downside and break this low, then that could get very nasty heading into the back end of the year. Kaye, what are your thoughts on the charts and perhaps the markets just in general going into the third and fourth quarter, essentially?
Well, I think the first issue that we have is the last 3 days, the SPY did create a gap. So the last 3 tradings, if you switch to the daily chart, you will notice that there was a gap. So
Yeah,
I really
massive
think
gap, yeah.
massive gap, right? So I really think that the next week we'll probably see that gap fill happening, which means stock is going to come down and fill that gap. So we could see the 660, 662, 63 range as well. uh, and that would be cutting very close to your trend line. Now,
Yes.
I think a lot really depends on this day-to-day drama of how the U.S. Iran war plays out. I think that is something that nobody can predict, uh, if you unless you're an insider. So one day you'll have a good news, next day you'll have a bad news, and we'll just go yo-yo. Now, if you remove that part and you just focus on the earnings, I think strong earnings growth for the last quarter, and how the future for these other the big names that are coming out. And I think the third is, how are these big names, a lot of these big names, especially in the SaaS world, or even Microsoft, for example, how are they going to deal with Anthropic's claims about, hey, we're going to launch into cybersecurity is going to destroy all the companies, just the narrative that's forming against the SaaS companies in general. So a lot of eyes on that, and that's going to actually also drive a lot of narrative and the direction of the SPY. But I wouldn't be surprised actually if we do see a dip to the new lows as well this earnings
Yeah.
season.
I think that commentary on that gap filling, I think it feels almost very certain. It's a case of basically when, not if, but when that happens. Because it's not that far down, really. I should have brought the daily chart on top of this. Silly me. Perhaps we can have a look at it later on if we've got not many
Yeah, it's only 3%.
requests. But yeah, it's a 3% nothing. I mean,
Nothing.
with this news, potentially, if this news holds today, with obviously US blocking the Strait of Hormuz, then of course that can come down 1-2% tomorrow alone. And then all of a sudden we're back down and filling that gap by Wednesday, Thursday. Who knows? But yeah, no, it's an interesting time within the markets. Just make sure you're not playing it safe, but just paying more attention to your risk management is what I'm trying to say. So don't go all in, that's for sure, on these sorts of dips. It may seem good at the time, but yeah, just make those moves and take base hits, I think, is one of those things that people say. Okay, we'll move on then to the next slide. Of course, this is our past performance. I apologise for the kind of colour difference. You can't quite see what's going on here. But Kaye won again with Meta last week, up almost 9%. And of course, SoFi was up, but only a modest 2%. So Kaye takes that week home. And of course, it's all a bit of fun, really. These picks are more towards, next few months, next few years. We bring that commentary to the table when we go through the picks on a regular occasion. So yeah, just a little bit of fun, and basically you can see what kind of stocks we pick. So perhaps if you're watching this, you look at these stocks and think, oh, actually, I really like Reddit, I really like Neo, I really like CoreWeave. Then of course stick around, and we'll probably bring them back up in the future. Kaye, where can we find you at the moment?
Well, the three usual channels, the X, Substack, and YouTube. Pretty straightforward. Same handle, InvestK.
Nice and simple. Same for me as well, YouTube and X. I have a video coming out every month on YouTube, everything to do with kind of trading. Of course, whatever part of the journey that you're in, all of those videos, in my opinion, are pretty helpful. So go ahead and check that out at Shaun Trades _. Okay, we'll move on to the first pick of the week, which is my pick of the week, and that's RIVN. It's basically a trade setup. Of course, with the news that's happened over the weekend, we might actually see a bit of downside, but I'm not in this, and I don't want to be in this just yet, because I want to see my setup play out, which is essentially breaking out from this trend line that we can see on the screen here. Plenty of touches, obviously 1 to start off the move, 2, 3, 4, and basically almost 5, and of course we're on the 6th sort of touch now. What I'm looking for is a push out somewhere around that kind of 1650 level, something like that, and then a retracement back down to this volume profile kind of shelf, I guess, around 1550, that sort of area. So that would be the entry. Stop loss down below the trend line, obviously down below the most recent lows as well, with the aim to view towards that kind of 21% level, around that kind of $19. And the trade I want to play, and I want to get your feedback here, Kaye, because I know you're a bit more of an options trader. I'm kind of starting out this year with options. I've got an 18th of September $15 call for RIVN. Of course, what's that? Maybe what month are we on? Kind of 5 months out, something like that. But my view is that we've got 2 earnings calls within that space. Obviously, the second one being June, July, August, so 1 month out before the call closes. So there's still plenty of time after the second report to kind of capitalise on those potential gains. And of course, we've got some details here on the left which viewers can see. Yeah, what are your thoughts on this particular trade?
So I think you have, as you said, you have two big earnings report that will be coming out, and then the third big news that will be when they start the delivery. So if you are in the position or you plan to get in the position, as you look at the delta, which is 0.62, meaning 62% chance it's going to be in the money. So it's definitely you are taking that time, like, because when you're doing the call options, which means it's a directionally, you're choosing a direction, right? So in this case, the direction has to be right, so you need that time leverage. So September is definitely great. I mean, if you look at the price for October, November, if you want to have a little bit more time as well, so you can look at that. But I like the trade here because the catalyst, at least I'm expecting that the as soon as they announce when is Rivian going to start the delivery, and I'm assuming
Yeah.
they probably, once they announce the delivery and the following earnings report, or the next earnings report, they are going to also announce the reservation, and that might boost the stock, at least during this whole, again, the narrative of the stock. Now how it does in the long term, we don't know, nobody can predict it, but at least the short term boost from these catalysts will definitely take the stock, closer to 20, maybe 25. That's what we are aiming for at least for the year end.
Yeah, I mean, spoken about that, and the turn of the year didn't move with our kind of yearly picks. And I think Rivian was one of yours, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is my one of my yearly picks. Yes.
And I mentioned the fact that it could probably get to 30, 40 at some point this year. I don't
Yeah.
think it will stay there, but I think it can get to 30, 40 if things go right, of course. So this is a bit more of a conservative play, in my opinion. I know it's only 5 months out, but it's it's a risk you take with such a call. But of course, these are the current prices. If the market opens down red tonight, then of course, if we have a really red day, that's an ideal time to buy. Well, at least in my opinion,
Yeah, yeah.
items
You of course you
yeah,
should buy calls on red days, and
of
maybe you can
course,
even you can shave off $1 here on the strike, right? You can even look at
exactly.
$14.
That is ideal, isn't it? So I'll be looking at that price definitely for tomorrow. Obviously, that's not when I want to enter. I wanted to kind of break out, come back down, retest it. That's when I want to enter. We'll see if we get that set up at all. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Rivian. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on Rivian and this potential trade. But yeah, I think we've finished that. We're going to move on to Kaye's pick of the week, which is Meta. Take it away, Kaye.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward on the Meta. Not much happening. And the reason I chose Meta was that Meta in the last couple of weeks, we have been in a pretty solid downtrend, and then we started seeing this. Last 3-4 days, we started seeing this barcoding, and then we saw these gap ups. And the reason is, there are a couple of reasons. This one reason is the sentiment around Meta has starting to shift, especially around the Muse AI. And going through some sentiments analysis on X, the general feedback, or at least the initial feedback for Muse AI, has been pretty positive. Now, of course, there are some negative feedbacks around Alexander Wong as well, but overall, Meta has been severely beaten under all its moving averages, 200-day, 300-day, all the big moving averages is under it. So right now, the play that I'm looking at is that we had this downtrend line that's coming from, I think last year. Yeah, last year September we've been on a downtrend. So from the current spot, we have about 2% gap where we could see either the stock could continue to rise, or we could see a decline from that trend line. So you could play that. You could position yourself to maybe have an entry around the 578, that gap, that yellow gap that you're seeing, even though it looks like it's filled, but depends on your definition of gap fill. If you consider wicks to fill the gap, then it's a gap, but then you need to make sure that you're consistent across the board, not just. I generally tend to see, if generally I would like to see some sort of a candle in that gap fill to be more consistent with it, but that's okay. You can consider that as a gap fill as well. So you could wait for the pullback, or you could actually play here to the trend line for the profit for 2%. I am already in this trade, so I am actually just waiting for the trend to either have rejection, and then I'll probably take a profit, or if it continues to go forward, I will probably sell some and wait for the runners to go. So yeah, so if it gets rejected, I will probably exit the position and then open a CSP around the 600 level. If not, if it continues to go further, then I'll just sell part of my portfolio and then keep the runners. Because we do have the resistance of 300 and 200 SMA coming in, so it will be difficult for Meta to break unless the earnings season is going to align with it, right? Within the next 2 weeks or so, Meta is going to report earnings, 2 or 3 weeks, I think. So that could push the stock above the 200-day, 300-day SMA.
It certainly could. I would like it to come back down. Obviously, you mentioned this gap
Yeah.
here that didn't quite get filled on the upside, but there's also a gap obviously to the downside as well, which I think you mentioned, down to that kind of 578 level from where it gapped up just here. So any sort of retracement back down to that level I think is healthy, because obviously you've got quite a big jump in the RSI, which actually I'm hovering over, but people can't see that. Let's have a look. So this is the RSI here, obviously down kind of maybe 25, 20, 26-ish, something like that. It's jumped all the way up to kind of 57 in the space of essentially 2 weeks, which is obviously, it's normal. It's relative strength, of course. It makes a lot of sense. But maybe you come back down to that kind of 40 level. That would be quite nice to see. And maybe just have a steady climb rather than keep jumping. And we might see that obviously overnight tonight, as we keep mentioning, or I keep mentioning. But yeah, lots of resistance here up above, so I would be cautious to get in for upside, that's for sure. Obviously, Kaye mentioned that, so I'm not going to continue mentioning that. But yeah, essentially my interest is around that kind of 578 to probably about 590. I think that might be that sort of area for upside, for continued upside, if we can actually hold that gap. Meta seems a bit like a bit of a gap trading stock, doesn't it? So
It has been
gap here, so it's come back down, it's filled and bounced. Had a gap here, come back up, come down, because that's kind of a gap trading stock. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the terminology is, but it has been like this for a while now. And if you notice, like when we saw this, gap down on the most recent one, those two heavy red candles almost going towards the 520 level on the right hand side. So I picked up the stock around the 550 level. So that's why I'm sitting on handsome profit, and that's why I want to like get rid of those stocks if it gets rejected from that trend line. Again, because this is a trading portfolio, I have nothing to do with my long-term position on Meta. That I continue to build. So if it gets rejected further, it goes down, I'll add to my long-term position. But from a trading standpoint, you just gotta take those 1, 2, 3%. A 1% in Meta is very different from a 1% in a $20 stock.
Yeah, I think that's a really good lesson for risk management in general. So you've got your position, it's going well, but you can see obvious resistance. Yes, it may not abide by that resistance and may go straight through it, but you're doing your best to manage your portfolio by taking some profits at that potential point of resistance, but you're waiting for that reaction at resistance first. Am I right?
Yeah.
So I think that's key for people to know. Don't get married to a trade, get into the trade and really think about what the opposite thing can happen throughout that trade. That's really good mismanagement practice, I think, for a lot of people. Okay, that was Meta. I think that's a really good stock. Obviously, I had RIVN, you had Meta. We'll see how they will get on this week, and obviously we'll report back next week in the next live stream. Okay, we'll move on to the audience request, shall we, Kaye?
Yeah, let's do it.
What am I doing? There we go. I'll do that. Right, let's jump into some charts. Obviously, before we do that, I'll stick it up on the screen again. Obviously, put your tickers in the comments, whether you're on YouTube. Stick them down below. They'll come up on the live stream, of course. And if you're on X watching, you can do the same thing there. I might leave it on the screen for a couple of minutes. Why not? Let's do that. What's up first, okay?
First is snow. And I know you have been trading snow.
Yes, I have. I took it off the screen for the cleanliness of the thing, but thank you for bringing it up, Kaye. I really appreciate that. Basically, I had a position. In fact, I might still have it on here somewhere. No, I did delete it. But essentially, it was to the upside. It was at this support zone, which actually went back to this sort of area. And then obviously the stop loss was down. I think it was about 7 or 8% below that. So my thesis was to come back up to this demand zone, of course, supply zone up above, which is 40%. I was happy to wait and obviously trail the stop loss up behind it to the upside. and bring that up so people can see it. But it just didn't happen. We had 2 days, 2 really rough days. I got stopped out within 2 days. But the important thing is I got stopped out at 6% rather than a potential 18, 20%. So that's risk management again. We lose some, we win some. But slow now. The interesting point here is obviously I've done further analysis since then. Kaye mentioned it as well, I think, before the stream, because we did have a little chat about Snowflake before the stream. We'll bring it up so people can see. We have this sort of area, which is quite interesting, lots of volume on the right side, which is about 107 to 114, that sort of area. Okay, what are your thoughts on this level? Do you still like this level?
107, yeah, that's actually a very key level. And while you were doing this, I quickly went onto the weekly, and why don't you finish it, and I'll give you my thoughts on the weekly side. I found something interesting.
Yeah, so I haven't really got a huge amount left to say, but I do like this level here, around that 107 level. So if we start a position there potentially, it's always hard to try and buy a bottom, but you can keep your risk very, very low here. Okay, I'll keep doing that because I've enlarged us. So yeah, and you can play it back up to the trend line. So you've still got a 6-to-1 trade there, another loss of a 5% potential there. So it's buying the bottom. It's hard to buy that, but that's essentially what I would look at, and it's fairly minimal risk and a 6-to-1 risk-to-reward ratio. So it's worth it in my opinion.
So two aspects. One aspect is this is part of the SaaS world, or SaaS apocalypse. That's what they call it, right? Because of the AI, that all SaaS companies are basically getting thrashed, whatever you want to call it. But if you switch to the weekly chart, and I'm looking at, and I look at these little bars, we are making a higher high on, but there's a key. Every time you get a high, you get this pullback of, the first pullback was 42%, the second pullback was 52%, and currently from the high we are down 56, 57%. Now that doesn't mean that it will go back up in the straight shot, but that is the trend. If you start to see this trend, if you draw it from the July, the trend line, and
I mean, even that alone is a trend line. Are you talking about just a general trend line here?
Just a general trend line. So I don't know.
Here.
Yeah. So
okay, I'll try that.
So my point is that I don't see AI. The problem is all these stocks are bundled into this whole SaaS companies, as everybody's going to get destroyed. Vibe coding is going to take it away. You are not able to take this away. It's not going to work like that, right? Because even today, if you use Anthropic or you use OpenAI, they have trouble in structured data, right? So why would you want to create a product from scratch? And that's where the market is not getting it. And I really think that long term, this is giving you a good opportunity. Let's say some of these names, they're not going to go away. Snowflake is not going to go away. ServiceNow is not going to go away. Salesforce is not going to go away. It's just beyond ridiculous. But this is how the market is pricing the stocks right now. And the funny thing is, I don't know if you saw the news last week, Anthropic actually invested in ServiceNow, and there's another company they invested in. So why would you invest in a stock when you think that stock is going to get replaced by your product?
Yeah, seems rather counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, from a technical standpoint, I think 108, that level, I think is very key. And I mean, right now I'm not in Snowflake was my pick for the last year, which I made at 30% or something, and I exited. But if it breaks the 108 and it starts to come into the the 90s, 80s, 70s, I mean, it gets very, very exciting to get into that stock.
And so your approach, would that be shares or leaps? I guess you're going to go long term here.
No, I will play leaps over here. I'm not going to drop $10,000 on buying 100 shares. I would rather own 2 or 3 leaps on Snowflake for 2 years out or 18 months out rather than invest in share, because then the turnaround, I can actually profit from it much faster.
Yeah, definitely.
And exit the position.
So this is the weekly chart I just wanted to bring up lastly. The RSI is down at 26 on the weekly chart. So it's pretty low, pretty depressed. And on the daily chart as well, down at 20. on the RSI, which is interesting because that's a bit of an RSI divergence here. This is a bit lower. This one came down to about 19. If we can, get a bit of a bounce here potentially, maybe drop down to 108, maybe that's an RSI divergence, but we'd have to wait out and see how that plays out, of course. Okay, we'll move on.
Let's move to the next one. We got actually a lot of tickers now, so we're going to move a little bit faster. CrowdStrike next is.
CrowdStrike. While you seem to come up every few weeks, doesn't it?
Yeah. So while you pull this up, I mean, I think all the cybersecurity companies are having a very, very tough time, and that is due to the Anthropic's new AI model. I think what is it called? It's called Mythos or something like that. Let me see what's that. Mythos, Anthropic. Yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah, they can spot weaknesses in almost every computer on Earth. But the problem is they haven't released it to the public because they assume that bad actors could actually use their software. But on the same side, Anthropic also has an issue with the compute power. They don't have the same compute level as OpenAI. So it's going to be very interesting how this plays out.
There's a bit of a zone here we've kind of come into. This is a weekly chart. It's going to be a bit of a theme, I think, this week. Just zooming out a bit. Sorry, I just had a bit of a cough there while you were talking. Yeah, we come back down to this kind of 387 level. We've had that previous resistance here. I just don't know. Yeah, it's hard to say where to buy this.
A couple of years back when we had that glitch, the airline glitch, where the stock fell all the way, right? Even after the release of this news, the stock hasn't we see some red bars, but we don't see that massive gap down.
No.
So, I mean, honestly, I think I would see the 340 is my next target to see if we continue this downtrend to 340.
It's kind of down here, isn't it?
Yeah.
340.
Yeah.
Yeah, this particular zone here, I think if it breaks out either side, that's what I'd be interested in. But for now, I'm just going to let it trade in this zone. Yeah, there's nothing else really popping off the screen for me personally.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on then.
Next is Next is CrowdStrike. Sorry, not CrowdStrike. Net Cloudflare. Oof, ugly.
Blimey, what happened here?
Let me see. I think it's probably the same Mythos situation.
Look at this. So this is obviously something I've drawn in the past. This is a very big trend line that goes back on the weekly chart. You can kind of see on the screen.
So because, and again, it's the same Anthropic. They launched this managed agents, and this Cloudflare, Akamai, they tumbled because of it.
Do you reckon it's overblown?
Listen, I mean, I really do think that this is a lot overblown, because think about this. In reality, even if, let's say, Anthropic can do everything that it claims, in reality, for that to convert, they will need huge amount of compute power, which translates to building more data centers, which translates to having more chips, which translates to having more energy. And you don't have any of that. And guess what? If you keep having these geopolitical tensions where you can't even get gas, do you really think that you'll be able to produce chips and the supply chains will not get impacted? I mean, the basic cost is going to go up for everything off the roof. So I do think that this is a lot overblown, and that's why the SaaS companies are currently getting beat down.
Hammered, yeah. I'd like to see how it reacts to this line once again. You can see it's acted as support twice. You could say almost maybe 3 times with this bounce here, because obviously did have a bit of a bounce after that. Mm-hmm. So maybe 3 times, but of course if you keep knocking at the door, eventually it will fall down. So
correct.
You'd like to think that this actually might break down even further, in which case you'll be looking at some gap fills, I reckon. So there's one down here. Let's turn on the gap indicator. Yeah, so we've got 2 gaps here, 1 and 2. So they represent around about 130 and about 110. So if we are to break this the support zone, which it could be likely given what's happening and the momentum that we've received in the last few days, perhaps that kind of 110 to 130 could be a good starting point for investors. It's not a stock that I really trade or even think about investing in. I don't mind the space. I think it makes sense, of course. Cybersecurity is what we need going forward. We need it now, not just going forward. But I would probably look more towards an ETF, just more my style of trading this sort of industry. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents on this particular stock.
Okay.
Okay.
Next is ServiceNow. And I think we just talked about ServiceNow briefly. Anthropic invested in ServiceNow. So that just kind of goes against the whole point that Anthropic is going to take everybody's business. AI is going to replace all the SaaS companies. Because why would you, I mean, logically, why would you want to replace an existing software? Wouldn't you want to build something new, more exciting, than to actually just build the same thing that's already exists today? So
Yeah. So I'm just trying to find some sort of exciting point this level, maybe. So 72, maybe 72, 75, that sort of area. Do you have any specific levels for ServiceNow?
let me see. I don't trade ServiceNow enough, so I don't know. But let me see. I would say, did this stock get split or something like that? Probably. I mean, I
It
look
has
at
come down from 250-ish, so
right. I think I look at a couple of the highs, like the previous highs. So maybe the 70, 71. Or even like in the mid 50s or 60s, like like high 50s, early 60s, like that probably would be a good point to see ServiceNow. But I know Anthropic just invested in it. That's very
did,
interesting.
did they invest in it after the market close, I guess,
I think so.
on Friday? Because that would make sense given the price action that's happened in the last 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know what the after hours move was on ServiceNow given that news, but there's been a resistance here back at 100, also a bit of a psychological level, so just be careful if you're kind of trading for upside into that sort of area. Not saying it won't blow straight through that with that news. And then, of course, targeting gaps to the upside. This one hasn't been filled, that one hasn't been filled. And there's a big one up there as well at 228, which is a long way away, I think. Yeah, I still, again, I'm not a fan of these stocks at the moment. I need to see some sort of strength at the moment. We're just seeing lower highs, lower highs and lower lows. So that's not
I think I'm
not what
keeping
we
the
want.
same. Yeah, I'm keeping in the same. I'm in the same camp. Everything is looking exciting because everything is looking cheap. But the problem is, unless the narrative really shift, we need the narrative has to move away from Anthropic back to the SaaS companies. Until that happens, I think getting in any stock at any level right now in the SaaS world could be detrimental.
It's potential RSI divergence there. So you can see the strength is coming up, but the stock is getting more and more depressed. So that divergence really does spark a good move to the upside. It's difficult to know when that will happen, but it's a good sign for a potential move coming forward. But again, that could be
Now,
any time. But I think 70 to 78 is good.
if you because you just touched ServiceNow, can you just also open CRM, which is Salesforce, so in the same category,
Yeah, of course.
and you'll see the same pattern here.
Yeah, multiple stocks with the same pattern.
Exactly. So the problem is you don't know at this point in time in the SaaS space which stock would work. So you could if you're new to SaaS space and you don't trade SaaS enough, then maybe getting into the ETF IGV might be a better idea from
I
a
was literally just writing down SaaS ETF.
yeah. That might be a better idea. But if you're going to trade, I mean, the CRMs of the world and nows of the world, they are not going away. You like it or not.
Yeah, I mean, you can just add, just dollar cost average over the next 12 months into those ETFs. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that's a good, but it's just something that people could be aware of. Just adding to that, and then maybe in 5-6 years' time, you'll be looking at thinking, "Oh, I'm glad I did that." But I'm gonna do a bit of research on that. Dive into that maybe tonight, actually. And have a little
Okay.
look. Okay, let's
Next
move
is
on.
Sentinel. I think that's a cybersecurity. Sentinel one.
Sentinel one. This one's not too bad. I mean, it's down, of course, but it's a bit flatter than all the other ones.
Yeah.
It has just broken well, maybe not very major support, but that's support. And of course, we're on the weekly chart at the moment. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit. yeah, lots of support here back in the day, around about 2023, and of course we retreating back down to that area in the last few months, and
But
just really
similar
breaking
trend,
down.
right? But all the
Yeah, yeah,
3, 4, 5 charts we have seen so far, the same trend you're noticing. Similar industries, cybersecurity, SaaS, same trend, and basically driven by Anthropic's, launching agents, or the Mythos, which is the new cybersecurity competitor. So that's basically the case here.
yeah. Not really much else to say, but I would be looking for. This is a bit more of a cleaner trend line that we've seen in the last few stocks. So breaking out of this trend line could be very interesting. But I imagine there's going to be a lot in the way in terms of moving averages, etc. So yeah, there's loads of moving averages above. It'll be tricky for sure. Okay, not much to say on that one, but we'll move on.
Okay, so we covered this, and now we have money manage mega caps like last session, if possible, Amazon, Microsoft, Palantir. So yeah, let's kick it off. Let's pull up Microsoft first.
Awesome. Good to have you back, Money
Microsoft,
Manage. Hope you had a good Easter.
Microsoft.
Right, we'll start with Microsoft, shall we?
The funny part was, while you bring Microsoft up, so there was this new update on Anthropic, for the new one of the new models, and their their Word document updates and Excel updates and PowerPoint updates are actually better than Copilots, and that is
Well,
Microsoft's own product. Oh my god! Like,
yeah, everything's better than Copilot. I'm not a big fan of that.
Microsoft is see, if you think about, from all the mega cap, Amazon, they don't have their own LLM. Microsoft, they don't have their NLMs. Apple does have 2 billion devices, so they can be the intermediary, right? So everybody wants to use Apple devices to propagate, or use that as a way to distribute AI, right? But Google has their own LLM. They are in very good shape. um, Microsoft actually is in a very big pickle. But Microsoft did launch this new product, which is, I forget the name of the product, where instead of just going through OpenAI, they are looking at all the models and selecting. Satya Nadella posted that, I think, last week or the week before. We were away. We were not live, but it was
Yeah,
on X. But I don't know when that will be available to enterprises.
maybe a bit of commentary throughout the earnings call coming up
Probably
in a
they
couple of
will
weeks.
see. Basically, right now, this is Microsoft is in a big pickle, and Satya Nadella has to do something about it. Otherwise, this is not going to see any light of the day anytime soon.
Yeah, but it's quite a drop, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
Just on a technical
Ridiculous.
on a technical level, this is from all-time highs. We're currently sitting about 33% down, but we have gone as low, at least recently, we have gone as low as 35% down. This next step down is actually 40% down, back down to kind of 330, 340.
Yeah, I mean, if it's three
That's
thirty,
where,
it will be a 300-day SMA on the weekly.
really,
Yeah,
oh, let's bring that up. I want to see that. Do I have that?
if you have
Don't
the
think I have
SMA,
that.
but on the weekly, if you bring
Oh,
that,
there we go.
yeah,
So that's the 200 and that's the 300
exactly.
cloud. So
Ooh.
if we get a sharp drop down to 330, 340, that could be, as they say, a generational buying time. If you see Microsoft doing well in the next 5 to 10 years, of course.
Yeah, I don't think Microsoft's going away. Let's
No, no,
be
of
let's
course
be
not. Yeah,
honest. But you would want Microsoft to drop even more, so that you can build into it, if you really want to invest in it.
one to watch, that's for sure.
Want to watch, yeah.
Given what's happening within the markets at the moment. Okay, let's move on.
Amazon. I have not been following Amazon lately, like what's going
Wow,
on the day to day. But man, the stock just like
a green
blew.
candle. Look at that. Well,
Yeah.
yellow. Um, this zone is a zone that I've liked and have brought up in the past, apparently, but haven't actually looked at it in the last few weeks. That's a shame, especially as it kind of consolidated here. What happened last week was just general market
Yeah, it's the general
inflation.
market. Everything was up.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Apart from Microsoft. Yeah, no, congratulations to Amazon people. I mean,
I mean, the last one of
successful.
the news is they're investing 25 billion in a data center in Mississippi, but I don't think that is the reason. Another news is Amazon to sell Eli Lilly's weight loss pill via same day delivery. But those are not. the key news why it went up this much. But again, it's coming to that trend line. Let's see if we can actually break that, or are we going to see a decline, rejection from
Yeah, yeah, that's got to be big resistance. I think if it does, I wouldn't be buying here, that's for sure. But if it does react at this level and come back down, I think this level here, 212, 214, 215, that sort of area, because then that would be kind of a head and shoulders play.
that? Yeah.
Kind of, how am I going to draw this?
And also with with the latest move in prices, it has created multiple gaps on the daily. So I wouldn't be surprised that we see a rejection, we fill those gaps.
I've really messed up that drawing. Yeah, anyway. Back down to this kind of 215 level, that would be interesting for me. But then earnings, that might skew it slightly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. Apple, maybe?
Palantir.
Palantir.
Yeah. Then we can go Apple as well after that. And then Adobe, and then we can continue.
Oh,
Again.
actually, Apple was really annoyed me the last couple of weeks. I'll tell you later when we come to it.
Okay.
I had a trade on it and it punched me out. Yeah, Palantir. Okay, this is interesting. I've got a bit of it. Well, I've got so many lines on the screen that it's kind of a bit confusing. But this zone that we've got here between 126 and 162, that's a really big zone. But it looks like it's kind of starting to kind of respect this sort of zone. I think staying on that is key. Maybe, I don't know if you look at trading. I know you like kind of levels and zones to trade with options. Is this something you'd look at, or is this zone a bit too big for you?
I mean, yes.
$30.
The pattern, yes. The ticker, no.
Okay.
I don't
too
trade.
volatile.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, Palantir, I'm not that big of a fan personally, even though I have had good success with Palantir. Just not my preference.
That's fair enough. Some people just don't like certain tickers. I don't like Coinbase. I don't like AMD.
Yeah, and I don't have a good reason for it. Why? Is this? I just don't get attracted to trading Palantir personally.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think if we break down this particular zone that we're kind of trading in, which could very much happen, of course, I think coming back down to this kind of level of $100 would be.
I mean, that's gonna wipe out a lot of profit for a lot of people.
Yeah, but these things happen for these stocks.
Yeah. I mean, there is no volume at that level actually. If you look at on the right hand side, there's no much volume there. You're looking at further down, and after that is in the $70 and $80 range. That's when the volume starts to really pick up.
This bit here, yeah, 70 to 85. Yeah, that's interesting. So maybe you could actually drag that down here and
exactly
have a bit of a volume shot there. That might be a scary watch for a lot of people viewing. Do apologise, Palantir fans, if you're watching this. I'm not saying it's going to go down there, of course. We will have earnings just around the corner, probably that Monday, 11th of May. So a month's time. And that'll be interesting to see if they can improve on a very, very impressive last 3 or 4 years.
But if you think about it, right, before we just switch, so right now we have this whole geopolitical situation going on. This is the green time for Palantir, right? Because technically all their software should be being able to help to do the whatever they want to do, right? From the strike standpoint. So if it doesn't work right now, I'm not saying it doesn't work in that sense, but if the stock doesn't show the growth here, then you are looking at a downside potential. I think there was also a reason, because I don't follow Palantir. I think there was some news with again Anthropic being. Let me see if I can pull that news up on Palantir.
Talk of the town, isn't it, Anthropic?
Yeah, that's why I think it's a problem. I feel like, yes, so Palantir declines, but Wedbush downplays any threat by Anthropic. And this is the latest news from April 10th. Yeah, Friday. So Palantir shares were down because AI analytics darling has now plunged. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the problem is, right? Because where's the compute going to come from if you're going to replace all the softwares? But nobody cares about the reality and the ground realities. It's all about the narrative, how we see what is the potential. The price moves on the potential, not on the reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Next is Apple, you said, right?
Yeah, we could do Adobe first.
Okay.
Obviously, that's in the ticker.
Yes.
That's in the comments. Ramesh, obviously, we did cover, you probably watched it already. We did cover Microsoft probably about 5 minutes ago now. So if you did miss it, go back and obviously rewind, get our thoughts on Microsoft. We're going to go over Adobe for you now, and then we'll cross over to maybe Apple, maybe Neo, just a few names that really
Yeah,
tick to us at the
Apple,
moment.
Neo. We can pull up Tesla. Tesla.
Yeah, awesome.
Folks don't talk about Tesla anymore.
No, they don't. I wonder why. Okay, Adobe. This is interesting. I've got a few lines drawn here. Obviously, we've got a bit of a trend line drawn there, a bit of a trend line drawn here. This is obviously the nearest one, so perhaps we just get rid of that for now. This is another trend line which is recently broken. Actually, really nicely respected. Come back up, retested, and moved down. So that could have been a good entry for a short, given the market and how the narrative is. But we'll get rid of that for now. That's already been respected. Looking at lows of down to $211. So given the fact it was at the peaks, fairly recent peaks of 640, that's that's insane. Now, what has been driving this, Kaye? Do you reckon it's just the rise of AI and how
Yeah.
Adobe just cannot keep up with it?
That has definitely played a big role in the general decline.
67% down from all-time highs.
I mean, if you go on Seeking Alpha, and
not
if you have the membership, you will see just a lot of folks pumping Adobe on their analyst. Man, Adobe has been struggling. I mean, let's be honest here.
I think it can continue to struggle. I mean, I don't know much about them, to be fair, apart from the obvious kind of, editing software. They do have AI capabilities in there somewhere, but it's just not as good as other vehicles. But yeah, I just think with the competitive nature that's happening within this industry, I think it's just going to be very difficult to improve. I mean, I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong for all the Adobe investors and fans out there, and employees, I guess. But yeah, so it's going to be a difficult time for them, I think.
Yeah, I
see
think
that on the chart. So
going back into the same thing that we have been saying across all the ticker requests, right? Any SaaS company right now is just no touch zone. Just stay away from it.
absolutely. Okay, hope that helped for you, Ramesh. We're going to move on to, let's go Apple first.
Okay.
I'll let you speak to Apple before my. Well, should I go first?
No, you should go first because I'm not trading Apple. I'm very bullish on Apple, but I'm not trading Apple right now.
So I had a very simple supply and demand trade on Apple on the daily. Originally, obviously, my stop loss was down below the demand zone, as you can see, kind of grayed out, I guess, there. Annoyingly, I did what I said I was going to do, which is great because for my disciplinary and that kind of stuff. But I got into the trade here on Thursday. Obviously, Friday went up nicely, and then I brought up my stop loss just to below this wick here. Let me zoom in so people can get a bit more detail on this. I bought the stop loss just below this wick, and then lo and behold, the next day after the really nice one, it just came down, wicked, and pushed straight back up. And it has obviously gone up 3 days since. And that's just trading. It wasn't a huge position. I think it was like 1% or something like that of the portfolio, which is not the end of the world. And the risk was obviously well managed.
So you triggered your stop loss, right?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, straight away. Well, within this candle here. So it was looking good. It was looking really nice on, I think it was Monday actually. Yeah, because obviously Easter Friday I wasn't trading. So the Monday I thought, okay, cool, this trade's going pretty well. I'll bring up the stop loss as I said I would do on the X channel, the X profile that obviously I've got. And then obviously the Tuesday it went down quite aggressively. It went down like 5 or 6%, something silly like that. And obviously subsequently kind of brought back up within the zone. So if I had left just one more day, if I had left my stop loss in the original position,
you would have.
I would have been fine. And obviously, in hindsight, maybe this area would have been a better place to buy in general, rather than up here. But that's what we learn from these trades. I'm fully transparent with this position, so
I think that's why
what's happened there.
But that's why personally I hate going into the weekend with an open trade.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that, and I don't mind it as long as the size is appropriate. Obviously, this wasn't a huge position of mine. So even if Apple was down 10, 20%, I still would have been fine. It would have been very, very nasty if that happened. But yeah, it's just how it goes sometimes, Kaye. You know that. Everyone knows that watching.
Yeah.
It's just how you manage it. It's how you bounce back from that and how you emotionally recover from that. But yeah, okay. What's your thoughts on Apple at the moment?
Yeah, let's do Tesla.
Okay, we'll move on, shall we? Do you want to have any words on Apple?
No, man. I mean,
No,
listen. I think long term. I think Apple is geared for, I think it's my largest position. I'm just gonna hope for it to keep going up.
there's a lot of anticipation around Apple this year, isn't there? Folding
Yeah,
phone,
I hope
glasses,
they
that kind of
deliver,
stuff. So
because, and you know what? I don't really care much about the AI part of AI Apple. I really care about their product, and I do think that the laptop that they have launched, the Neo, I think it's called Neo, if
yeah,
I'm
it is. Yeah,
right.
anyhow, yeah,
I think that is going to be a game changer, because that laptop gets into a segment of users who would never buy Apple, because the price was always higher. The
yeah,
500 $600 range is just crazy.
100%. Um, Moving on to Tesla then.
Hmm.
I like this
Tesla,
area now. But actually, I think I started a position on this the other day.
you
Uh,
did.
yeah,
I mean,
I might regret that on Monday, but
uh, so there's a news that they're saying Tesla is developing a new, smaller, cheaper EV. See, I think
they've been saying that for years.
I think the pure problem Tesla right now has, and I don't know why Tesla bulls will not like it. Boss, end of the day, you bring the biggest revenue, the most revenue from selling cars, and your cars are old, like from a design perspective.
Yeah,
Every other brand is launching new models, even if they're changing just a slight, on the headlight, they call it a new, the new 2000, whatever the year is. You haven't launched anything new. Cybertruck is a complete failure. Let's call it out. A spade is a spade, right? Cybertruck is a failure. You decided to shut down X and S and X, which were not selling to begin with that much anyways, the high end vehicles. So you only have the 3 and the Y. And then yes, you are going to go ahead and you're going to scale the robo taxi, and okay, that's all that is good. But hey, it's been what, last year June they launched it, right? It's coming up to 12 months, almost in 3 months it'll be 12 months, so 9 months in, and you haven't scaled to like even 10 cities. So okay, so that's not the really revenue occurring business model. It hasn't developed into bringing revenue in. Then the other thing they're saying, okay, we're going to build robots. Unless your robot is like, really priced at like $5,000, $10,000, which means that majority of the people are not going to spend $30,000 to buy a robot for a home helper, right? Why would I pay $30,000 to buy a home helper? And until you are able to bring the robot, first of all, it should be functional, that it actually does the homework, like housework, household work. And second of all, it has to be priced at a point where people, common people, middle class people can buy.
yeah,
So if you're going to price it at $30,000, it's not going to sell. And Elon Musk, with all infinite genius, hasn't actually delivered anything. What has he delivered lately?
yeah. Definitely work to be done there for Tesla. But going back to a technical basis here, we've got a bit of a demand zone on the weekly chart, which is this area here, which is my thesis for upside. Obviously, nice tight stop loss. There's a 3-to-1 potential position there. I think breaking out of this trend line would be key moving forward. Obviously, we've got earnings in a couple of weeks as well, so that would be interesting to see what he says. If there's any developments with this new vehicle that they're
I think
producing. Sorry.
I think just a launch of a new vehicle will, I think, give a lot
Yeah,
more breathing
because
room to Tesla.
like you say, they're a car company at the end of the day.
Yeah.
At least predominantly, that's what makes them money. So maybe focus on building that out rather
Yeah, I
than
mean, you got to launch something new, right? That could excite
yeah,
because it's not just the existing customers want to buy again, right? You want the new customer base to buy, and all they're seeing the same models, all over the place. A lot of people actually have that preference. They don't really care about. You can call all FSD and this and that, all that mumbo jumbo, but end of the day, people like the looks of the car. Like, do you like the car? Do you not like the car? Maybe somebody drives a minivan, right? And for them, even Model Y is small. So when they have this Model Y L, which is the, I think, the 7-seater, the bigger Model Y, that I think is just coming to US. It hasn't even launched in US. So I mean, you need variety. Period.
you do. I mean, you look at what RIVN's doing. I'm not saying it's any way the same scale. And of course, it's a very different vehicle, but they've released essentially the same sort of vehicles that are one. Of course, there's a lot of differences, but there's a lot cheaper, and I think that's going to appeal to a lot more people because obviously the product seems like it's the same, but it's half the price. So maybe Tesla can follow that a little bit. Okay, we'll finish up there then for the stream. We've gone through quite a few stocks. We've had a really good time. I don't know about UK, but I'm really looking forward to the week ahead. I think it'll be very interesting. I'm going to stay awake tonight to see what the futures do. I think
Futures,
I'm quite
yeah.
interesting to have a look. What are your thoughts kind of going into the week, and what can you bring to the viewers before we close out?
I think barring which we don't know about what is going to happen with Strait of Hormuz and all the drama, Twitter drama and X drama and whatever, right? I think the key will be focusing on ASML and TSMC this week,
Yeah.
especially from the chip demand standpoint. And that will kind of give us an idea on not just the Mag 7, but also to these AI companies. Because at the end of the day, you need the chips for data centers. And without data centers, you cannot expand AI. And then you need energy. So a lot of interesting things to look.
Keeping an eye on the beginning of the earnings season, I think that's key.
Yep.
Obviously, stay grounded. Obviously, have that risk management right in place in this type of market. I'm not talking to UK, I'm talking to the viewers, but yeah, talking to you as well, I guess. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Obviously, make sure you come back next week, 1 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be here once again to go through the charts and see what's happened from the week before. Massive thank you to Wolf as well for letting us use the platform. We couldn't do it without you. Really appreciate it. And obviously, thank you to everyone watching. Thank you to all of those that are commenting week in, week out. Today we've had quite a few returners. So we've had Nihalala, Felix, I think we've actually seen before, Money Manager, of course, and Ramesh as well. So yeah, keep them coming. We'll see you next week, 1 p.m.